Well, welcome everybody to the media panel for the ACE week. I would like to first start by giving instructions to open up a live transcript. Um, so to open up a live transcript, click the live on custom live streaming service in the top left corner and selecting view stream on otter.ai live notes. Now that we've got that out of the way, let's start with an acknowledgement of welcome to country. I'm calling from the Bunurong, Boon Vurung, and Wurundjeri Woi Wurrung peoples country, and I would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land and honor their elders, past, present, and emerging. I would like to give out a warm welcome to all the panelists and all the attendees. Thanks for taking out the time to attend the panel, both the attendees and the panelists. So without further ado, let's just get started with the event. So you guys want to have like a particular question that you want to start first to address?
We could begin with introductions.
Oh yes, of course. I'm sorry.
No, totally okay.
I was hoping to remain mysterious, like the dark side of the moon.
Yeah.
In that case, Artemis, would you like to start?
Sure thing. I also just want to quickly acknowledge that I am calling in from Wurundjeri land myself. I want to pay personal respects to elders of this land, past, present, emerging. And I want to take this quick moment to encourage you all, if you are like me in anywhere in regional Victoria, to look up the Djab Wurrung Embassy, and if you can get out to help them, there's a really big fight going on to protect some sacred trees that are it's really important. And the pandemic has meant there's been a lack of support, but it's getting to a critical point. So I just want to say, if you can, yes, please get out and support. I wish I could myself, but I lack the vehicle. Yeah. But yeah, no, that's a thing that's important. Anyway, time to talk about myself. Hi, I am Artemis Munoz. My pronouns are they, them. I am a multidisciplinary artist, but most generally I work as a performer, writer, and video producer. And yeah, I come to you all with a background of talking about asexuality since before I came out to anyone. So very, very excited to be here today.
We're happy to have you.
Hey, Artemis.
My name's Mel O'Connor. I am calling from the Wurrung country, and I would like likewise to pay my respects to the Wurrung people, the first peoples of this land, and pay my respects to their elders, past, emerging, and present. I am a researcher at Deakin University. I'm a PhD candidate. I study representations of asexuality in young adult literature, particularly why those representations are so overwhelmingly negative and why so many of them are connoted with death. So that's my bag. Elise, did you want to introduce yourself, or?
Well, up to me. All right. So I'm Elise, and I'm calling from the land of the Durag people and acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land and honor elders past, present, and emerging. I do not work in anything related to this panel. It is just my one true love, my OTP, going out for it. I like to talk about TV and watch TV, and for a while there I was deep into Tumblr. It's okay, I'm not anymore. But yeah, I watch TV and I love talking about those kind of things. And I have lots of opinions. Can we not talk about me and talk about other people now? I'd feel better.
I can introduce myself. My name's Amy, and I'm also calling from the land of the Durag people and acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land and their elders, past, present, and future. I, like Elise, am sort of just like a big nerd and consumer of all sorts of media. Big reader since I was a kid, and just I really enjoy watching TV, movies, just taking in kind of that pop culture universe. I think that's all I want to say.
Carrie, Kate, do you guys want to say anything? I guess they're. My name is Abby, and I'll be your wonderful moderator. Hopefully, I won't have to moderate much at all. You guys are all wonderful people, and I'm looking forward to like listening to what you guys have to say and the discussions we're going to have for the next hour and a half.
Awesome.
Yep. So, media representation is a very important thing, not just for ACE people, but for all people, especially the state of media, be it like movies, music, anime, whatever it might be is. And that's what we're going to discuss right now. So you guys have any like hot topic, like a main question that any of you want to start off with?
It's like you say, like representation in media is extremely important. It gives people an alternative to the kind of automatic cishet default assumption of a way to be. So seeing characters like you on screen gives people something to, I don't know, model, or maybe not model their identity after, but to use to understand their identity. But of course, like not all representations are good, which makes the good ones stand out. So if I could start, maybe my question would be, what's a good representation of an ACE character that you've seen recently? Before we get into all of the bad representations, because that's going to take up a chunk. What are the good ones?
I'm going to say it. I'm going to be quick to say it. Todd from BoJack Horseman.
Of course, my boy.
Need to watch BoJack Horseman. I'm missing out.
Artemis, get out of the panel.
I know.
Where's this panel and go watch BoJack Horseman?
I feel like I only watched BoJack Horseman because I knew there was an asexual character on it, and just enjoyed the show for what it was anyway. But that story of Todd was just, they did it really well, and because it just seemed like a natural extension of the character's story. It wasn't really like the main focus, but it was done well enough that they told it in a really authentic way.
Yeah. A lot of people. Oh. No, you go, Elise. My bad.
It was authentic to not only the character, but also the experience as an ace, because that is pretty much kind of how things work for me. Like, oh, I'm not this. I'm not this. I must be nothing. And then I went to a meetup.
Which is really good because to my understanding, I could be wrong on this. I know that it's definitely the first animated one, but I have a feeling that BoJack Horseman actually contains the first ever asexual support meeting shown on screen in television. If not
yeah.
Oh, am I wrong? No. Pull me up. It's definitely the first animated.
No, there is a show. He's like one of the main characters, but there is a show that aired before BoJack Horseman. It's not a very big show. It was called Siren.
Oh, there is support meeting in Siren.
No, Sirens with an S.
Oh, right, Sirens.
Yeah. So what that show is, it's a US-based sitcom, and they're based like the EMT firefighter type things, and it's based at this one station, and there are three main guys who are in one truck, like ambulance. I don't know if they're fireys or ambos or both. The American system confuses me. I'm like, why don't you just have three? But one of the other people at the station is Ace, and she is like Ken and Ace. They talk about it, and the joke is not that she's asexual, but one of the dudes is not asexual and into her, and they're all like, she's not going to change. So like, you know, are you prepared to go into this kind of thing? But at no point is the joke on the fact that she's an asexual. It's just you know, the incompatibility of their identities, I guess. It's a terrible show. It has representation, because one of the lead characters is a gay guy, but it's also very selfie, and that's the main basis of their humor. But there is kind of an ace character.
Well, I've never been so happy to be wrong. That sounds like something I'll have to put on my watch list.
Remember, I tried to warn you that it's not good.
I'll keep that in mind.
But the representation is quite good. And then there's also actually the first one comes from New Zealand, 2005, Short Street. It's a New Zealand soap. Shortland Street. Sorry, Kiwis. I only know about jangles and chili bins. But Shortland Street, there is an ace character in that who had a storyline. And part of the storyline was actually he was engaged. And he's like, why don't... Garrett, someone is saying.
It's Gerald Tippis. I know that because I do a lot of reading about obscure ace stuff.
It's very far away, but 2005, I think, is the first TV character. But, you know, sorry, Todd, not the first.
No, not the very first asexual character, but maybe the first in the mainstream.
Definitely the first in a mainstream show and a main character and an established main character as well. So it's not like just, you know, bringing on an ace character for that one episode to be like, look, we've ticked our box of diversity. Now you'll never see them again.
We've come a long way since House MD.
Yeah. We actually have a question for the panelists right now. So an anonymous attendee asks, what kind of representation do you think is best? Representation that involves coming out and figuring out being on the ace spec, or ace spec characters just going about their day?
Can I answer this one?
Please.
Honestly, I personally think that we need a mixture of both, right? Because there are a mixture of audiences that we need to reach. We need to reach the young person who still doesn't quite know what's going on with them and is trying to figure things out. And we also need to reach people who need to go a bit deeper than that 101, you know, and maybe we need to reach people in a way that says that asexuality is normal and it's not something to be struggled with. It's just a part of life. So we need all of that. We need all of that. And that's kind of the biggest problem with the representation we have, is just how little there is, right? And that when there is stuff, that it's not very good. We kind of need to tell all of these stories, and we need to tell them often and in different ways, and in characters that are, you know, vampires and firefighters and tap dancers and all of the different kinds of characters you could possibly have. We need to have them be ace as well.
I'm actually super pro ace vampire because, well, when you look at law in various things, your vampire is always this really sexual character, like a very sexual being, and like there's so much of the euphemism for vampires is around that sexual way. Ace vampire, I'm just killing you for your blood. This means nothing. I gotta go now. Not trying to seduce you. You're just my victim.
I think we especially need ace vampire firefighters.
That's right. He's not there for the seduction. Just needs to, you know, still be good. He's got vampire. He's got firefighter because he also has self-loathing a bit, because fire vampire is not right there. I watch a lot of Buffy.
Only takes out the fires with holy water for like the extra danger.
Maybe for church fires.
I think Artemis really gave like the perfect answer there. I don't representation is really important, and we shouldn't have to choose. That question of like, would you rather see an ace character come out or an ace character live their life? I shouldn't have to choose. Those should both be there. Like, I should have options for my representation. I shouldn't be boxed in. That being said, like, if I had to choose, it would probably be the first one, because I feel like there's a lot of people out there who still don't know what asexuality is. And characters like Todd, I can't imagine how many people watched that and thought, oh, wait, that's an option. And I really hope that we can like reach those people still that are still learning. Like, our community will never be large enough.
100%.
Yeah.
you need to kind of, one of the things that needs to be compared to, like the asexual stories that are coming out now, if you compare them to the mainstream just with the like the gay storylines from going times past, and how so much of that was with the coding of it. But now, and so it took a long time before you could have out the coming out scene with a gay character without it being like the end of the world. And certainly even now that we're starting to get more diversity of those kind of characters. So there's kind of a long way and a long, to build with that. And also,
but also like
a terrible representation with that as well. But they kind of go hand in hand with representation on why it's important, because it's all about being able to find out something as well as going, you're not alone. And there are other people who have done this and lived through it and all that kind of
I also want to add, we don't need to wait 70 years to have good ace representation like we kind of had to with gay representation, because we're not like strangled by the Hays Code anymore. Like we are allowed to have queer characters officially in the media now, and so like I think there's nothing wrong with us asking to have good, better now, you know what I mean?
I agree. Yeah, I
Yep,
think
that's yep. You guys are all absolutely correct. And I think the thing that I would like to see more is that people becoming more aware that ace people actually exist, because that's what I hear a lot personally.
yeah, I mean, when I was talking, we had a stall at the Mardi Gras Fair Day this last year. No, early this year. It's hard to keep track. And some people had obviously never heard of asexuality, and that's at the Mardi Gras Fair Day. And until they came across our store, and some people were asking me about representation in media, and some people, the only asexual character they'd ever heard of was Todd from BoJack Horseman, and that was how they learned about asexuality, because of that representation. And so it's not just important for ace people in discovering their own stories and people like them, but also for the general public to learn about it. So it's really interesting when I have those conversations at the fair day, just to see what people actually know or don't know, and where they get their information from.
I think that really, like, one of my favorite things about Todd in particular is, like, I hear again and again people tell me Todd is the only likable character in that show. I don't agree, but he is definitely, like, the sweetest, most likable, like, wholesome, like, alternative to the very, like, kind of dark messaging of the show. So you have Todd, who's kind of like this beacon of hope and just, happiness compared to all of the other grim stuff. And that is just so, like, almost, you want to say, ahead of its time, even though it's very much overdue. He is so good for that. Like, I have a few nitpicky points about, like, stuff that I personally don't like about Todd. I would argue that on some level his asexuality goes hand in hand with his immaturity, but overall, like, what a character. Like, to hear him say the words, like, I think I might be asexual, like, on screen, that is just a real, like, I cannot get through BoJack without crying at those scenes to this day. Like, I've watched it through like 4 times and I still cry.
Yep, Todd is a very good step forward. And I think that's that's a good note to, like, again, I guess, bring this question back. What is your favorite ace spec character? Hand canon, apparently. Yep.
Not head canon.
Headcanon, Jessica Rabbit as ace.
I've seen that post.
Yes. I'm going to go Katniss Everdeen.
That's a good answer.
The Hunger Games. She didn't care about the romance. She knew the romance would get her the sponsors that would get her to win. I tipped Katniss Everdeen with surviving. So does Katniss.
Yeah, Jessica Rabbit's just drawn that way. It's like she married the dude that made her laugh. Like, 100%. Love it.
My favorite ace character is from a book. Her name's Rumi Sato. She's from a book called Summerbird Blue by Akemi Dawn Bowman. It's an amazing book. I will type it into the chat. Yeah, I like explicit representation myself. Like, I'm not the biggest fan of headcanoning. I'm not going to try to take it from anyone. I'd just rather see it on the page or hear it said aloud. I I personally don't like having to read myself into characters that weren't necessarily intended to match my identity. I like explicit representation where there's no two ways about it. But yeah, so that's how I feel.
I guess to an extent, it's kind of like psychoanalyzing the character.
Hmm.
My
psychoanalyzing the characters.
Probably Parvati from Outer Worlds. She's an openly ace lesbian character in a video game, and I'm like,
Nice.
wow.
I personally like. I think I think that if we are too ready to accept like just coding as enough, like that's all we'll get. So
Exactly.
yeah, we definitely do need that explicit representation. But I also think it's very fun to read characters as a particular brand of queer, even if they're not explicitly so.
Yeah.
And I think it can like be very impactful because one of the headcanon character I've seen online is Dante from Devil May Cry, which is a very popular series of games. He's a demon slayer, and he's supposedly headcanoned as Ace. But if a cool character like that, a very cool character like that, is actually canoned Ace, that would be very impactful, and that would spread the word much farther.
Yeah, I totally agree. We've got the question that I was waiting for, which is, what stereotypes of asexuality have you seen in the media? A complete 180 swing on which characters do you like, what don't you like. I have a lot to talk about. My research in particular, as I've already said, is about this entwining of asexuality in death in the young adult fiction scene. Basically, what my research comes down to is that asexual characters, time and again, are othered as something that is not really alive. And this is a satellite of another trope, which is just that asexual characters do not belong. So there is this overwhelming trope of social exile, and that's not just in young adult literature, that's in media at large. That's things like the asexual robot. For instance, you've got like Data from Star Trek. You've got, or, you know, even the Doctor from Doctor Who. What else? Yeah, there's a comment in the chat that's basically this: asexual characters are always either aliens or robots. They're outsiders. They don't really belong with our society. And that's probably the most pervasive trope that I'm aware of, because it looks like a million different things. At its most extreme form, in my research, it looks like literally being corpse-like, which is like the removal of asexuals from our society in the most extreme way. And it actually builds on a lot of pre-existing research into asexuality, where there are indications that in the most damning report, which is called Intergroup Bias Against Group X, the researchers found evidence that both members outside of the LGBT community and members inside of the LGBT community considered asexuals the least capable of experiencing human emotion. Which is a really grim thing to hear, but that's in research.
Just to clarify that the X thing is referring to the Kinsey scale.
No, in this instance, the group X that they were talking about were asexuals. So they essentially did a study where they polled a bunch of people, and they found that asexuals aren't seen as being truly alive. And to see that reflected in this trope is pretty grim. So yeah, that's basically, that's my depressing factoid for the day.
Well, yeah, when I was thinking about that sort of topic, it sort of, when you think of a lot of like villains in movies, especially like kids movies and stuff, a lot of them are seen sort of, they've got that asexual kind of traits to them. Like they have that sort of bad stereotype of like they're not interested in relationships, they're kind of like the other, and that's just added to their otherness kind of as the villain, because you're not supposed to like them. And they kind of, some of the villains, I can't think of any in particular, but I do know that they sort of build on that sort of, they're alone and they don't, they're not interested in having a relationship kind of thing, to sort of make them more other for the audience to say they're not really, you know, likable as a character. Not so much probably at the moment, but going back like when I was a kid, a lot of the like Disney villains and stuff like that, you can kind of see those sort of stereotypes portrayed without actually saying, obviously, that they were asexual, but using those same kind of stereotypes, if that makes sense.
And I
The
think
other one I've
actually,
seen a lot is ace people being coded as a plant-like species or something along those lines, because I remember there's a game called Guild Wars 2 where there's an entire race of plant people who are all coded ace.
yeah, if we're talking about like other harmful tropes, I've started to see like the sort of like trying to make in trying to tell stories explicitly about asexuals. I've found a different trope pop up that I find pretty concerning. And I've seen it a few times now. It's like and it's hard because it definitely happens in real life, but it's like the only way to get drama out of a main character who's, you know, having that like coming to terms with themselves arc is to have them repeatedly put themselves in unsafe situations and repeatedly ignore their own boundaries, which is like, it's definitely a thing people do. And that's a symptom of us not having good representation. But I don't want that to become the dominant narrative in how we tell stories about asexuality explicitly going forward. And I am starting to see that pattern emerge, which does concern me a little. Yeah.
I mean, on the positive note, one of the reasons I love Parvati as a character so much is because she's not just a typical ace character in media, but she's also a very strong female character. She's supposed to be a very established engineer, and she's also lesbian. So she kind of like challenges a lot of the tropes that are traditionally set up for non-binary and ace people. And I think that going ahead, we're going to start seeing more and more like characters that are better representations of not just ace people, but also non-binary people.
Yeah, I mean, there is that whole concept of that asexual stories are boring, and that has come up a couple of times where the author of the story is just like, why would I make my character asexual? Because that's just boring and there's nothing to tell there. And that's obviously not true, but a lot of people, one in particular, please talk about.
That is the Moffat school of thought. That one person is Stephen Moffat, who was spat out of a hole in the ground. Moffat famously said that he didn't make Sherlock asexual because he considered that too boring, and nobody would want to watch a story about someone like that. I would say it's not really that much of a leap to say that he probably applied that same logic to the Doctor. A lot of people like inferred like a lot of things that the Doctor did in Doctor Who in the Matt Smith era were pretty ace, but they never decided to go there. Eventually they just kind of backtracked on all of that and brought in River's Song. Forever angry at Moffat making the Doctor uncomfortably sexual. Yes, how bloody awkward is it to watch? Extremely.
That is extremely awkward to watch.
But this is... Sorry, Elise, you go.
I remember Doctor Who used to be on the ABC at 6 on weeknights, if anyone else remembers that. But my dad used to watch it. And so you'd have the adventures of the Doctor and then the various companions. And it was all, adventure fun. And then, come back to 2005, whenever the new Doctor Who started. So like, cool. It's fine with Doc Chris. Once they bring in Rose and David Tennant, you're like, this isn't my Doctor Who. What the fuck are you doing? And then it just...
it definitely changed. That's for sure.
Yeah. And it's like, I don't care for this. And I think I've realized since that it's like they've taken my ace headcanon and my ace, role models and destroyed it. and thus I stopped watching.
And it just felt like they were like, oh, we need to pander to the mass audience that we're going to advertise Doctor Who to, so we need to have some kind of heterosexual relationship going on here, even though it's not quite explicit, like, you know, they're definitely together or not. But like, it's like they had to have that in there because that was their main audience, and they just thought people are going to want this. You need to have some kind of heterosexual relationship to make a story interesting. So
and also retroactively, it's so creepy because he used to go around adventure in the TARDIS with children. Is he also then trying to make children fall in love with him?
Oh dear.
Ham-fisted heterosexuality.
To take a step back, that idea of asexuality being a fun, there's a really interesting quote by Ella Prezibolo that I'm going to paste into the chat. She writes, "To be asexual for a subject of sexy society is to be a fun, to be boring, to be a prude." And that's a really interesting understanding of how, because we live in a society that is compulsorily sexual, where the default assumption is that you will be having sex. And to abstain from that makes you boring by default. And it's very that's such an important kind of, I don't know, prejudice or stereotype to kind of break apart. Because guess what? You don't need to have sex to be fun. I can't believe I have to say that. What's your idea of fun?
We marched in Mardi Gras one year. I don't remember which year. It may have been the first year that we marched in Mardi Gras. And some lesbian at the end was like, "You're asexual, you're no fun." And I felt, they were personally attacking me, but I have lots of fun. And fuck you for thinking otherwise. Hurtful. But no, that kind of thing is not just that's something and an attitude that does exist. And so, continues on.
Oh, well, we have a question from Cass. Thoughts on ACE coding x autistic coding? I often don't know how to easily talk about one without the other.
Yeah, especially with modern kind of characters, they have those kind of autistic traits. I'm also thinking a lot about the modern interpretation of Sherlock.
Yes, Sherlock was my first thought. But doesn't Sherlock end up having a romance storyline? I don't know. Either way, Sherlock is he might be read as autistic or he might be read as asexual. I'm going to tell you what he should be read as: offensive. Either way, he's poorly written. Just saying, every character in that show is a horrific stereotype of something. Don't even get me started on the Indian character.
I've never seen that Sherlock. I was also talking Elementary as well, where he's definitely coded as autistic.
Sorry, did I misspeak? I meant to lambast what's his name? Sheldon. I might have said Sherlock by mistake. I'm sorry. I was talking about Sheldon.
That show.
I might have misspoke. My bad. I take that back.
This makes much more sense now. Carry on.
That's my bad.
What Indian character? I was like,
that's my bad. I misspoke. Please don't. I hate Sherlock as well, but for different reasons.
Sherlock was super white.
With the Big Bang Theory and the portrayal of Sheldon, who, as you say, a lot of people were headcanon as Ace, but then it's sort of a very problematic character to have, as it's not a good representation of if it's even supposed to be an asexual character kind of thing. But as you said, that show is really based off a lot of stereotypes, and they're just playing off that and sort of making them really extreme, I think.
Yeah.
And then they claim they're not doing stereotypes, even though everyone is acting that way, except their press releases.
I think
even our boy Todd, in some episodes, seems to be he seems to have been written with some autistic stereotypes encoded inside. So even with good representation, there are some mistakes that writers seem to be making.
And I don't necessarily think it's a problem to have characters that are ace and autistic. Like I am a human who is ace and autistic, like very openly. We exist, but the problem then becomes if it's a conflation of the two, right?
Yes.
And if you're doing one poorly because you want to push the other more, you know, that's where all the troubles occur. And yeah, that this idea that being autistic means you're automatically ace or vice versa is bullshit, and we need to be away with that, especially in our media. But I think, you know, we can still have some very, very explicitly like designed that way autistic ace characters, but I don't think that's what's happening. I just think it's coding either way, rather than a choice on the behalf of the writers and showrunners, directors, whatever. Yeah.
And I think that part of it is because it's coming from the writer's own implicit biases and not their goodwill or their hope to like improve the representation. They're not doing it to like for good reasons. It's just them pushing their biases to forward.
100%.
And it also depends on whether the writer or director, whether the show actually, one, is ace themselves, or two, knows any ace people in real life, because otherwise they're probably basing their character on stereotypes that they've seen or heard of. So that's also problematic when you get that sort of happening as well.
A phenomenon kind of happens with asexual characters where, especially because you'll, at best, there are very few things that have more than one ace character in them. Because there's only one asexual character, a lot of people take that representation as a kind of monolithic representation where they look at it and they go, okay, so that's what asexuality is. And if it's a representation of asexuality that's been done with the same kind of building blocks as an autistic representation, then people will come away with this idea that they will always and forever be the same thing. So like there should be, I don't know, more representation of asexualities, plural, as in it doesn't look like any one thing. There's a lot of different ways to be ace. Yeah, so that's yeah. I think like, and you'll see that a lot. Like can't tell you how many times I've seen criticism of an asexual character by an asexual person just on the grounds that it doesn't match their exact experience of asexuality, which is awfully unfair. A lot of people will, like, I don't know, you might get people who are on the romantic spectrum criticizing aromantic characters, or people on the aromantic spectrum criticizing romantic characters just because it doesn't really match their experience. So it's, yeah, you end up in this really thorny place where it's difficult to please everybody at once. My ideal solution is lots of ace characters in the same media so people can see that there's other options. But maybe we're not at that point yet, but maybe we should be at that point.
We definitely should, because we tend to cluster and hang out with each other, so it's just realistic.
Yeah.
That's a good segue to our next question. We got a question. I'm just going to quote it. I've always wondered if there are any good / hopeful depictions of asexual folks in media who do engage in sexual activity. I've read about and known asexual folks who do have sex. People's experience of it is vary, but it seems even less explored in media than the standard sex repulsed / disinterested depiction of asexual folks.
That is a really good question. I've done a couple media studies of the young adult genre, and all of my research has retained the same thing, which is that there are not many sex favorable characters in this genre. They don't not exist, but there are not many of them. Yeah, so basically, like, you'll struggle to find them. The only kind of asexuals that I've seen who still engage in sex are very, very niche representations in YA. I am not familiar with any in television or media, unless it was a kind of accidental one. Like, you know, like a married woman says something that could be vaguely interpreted as ace, but I'm not aware of any deliberate ones, no, which is the saddest thing in the world as a cupiosexual woman who sees not one single representation of her sub-identity on screen. I'm trying to think of the best book I've read on that. Give me a moment to look up what it is. Somebody else talk, please. I'm gonna look up my old research.
Well, Amy, I think you were going to say something
know.
earlier. I don't know if it's on this question or something else, but
I was just going to say that we definitely do need the varied representation of asexual kind of experiences on any kind of media. And oops. What was I going to say? And yeah, to your point, unless you just need to show a group of aces hanging out together at a meetup or something. Just have it very kind of...
Todd's at a meetup, and that was amazing. And when he walks in and it's got the asexual meetup, and then he has this chat with these asexuals. It's like aces, talking to aces. Oh, my heart is so happy thinking of it. Watch BoJack, it'll break your heart into thousands of pieces. And that scene of Todd, we'll put it all back together.
So the book I'm thinking of is C.T. Callahan's Plastic Wings. I'll tell you right now, it's not that good, but it's the closest thing I've ever seen to a sex-favorable asexuality on page. It uses sex favorability almost as like a kind of a vehicle to critique romantic cliche. So there's a lot of descriptions of like, you know, her boyfriend kisses her and she doesn't mind, but like it doesn't make her stomach full of butterflies. The world doesn't stop turning. It's just a kiss and it's a little bit sloppy and she doesn't really mind that much. So it feels very realistic in that respect. The answer is sadly no, not many.
The only place you're probably going to find any kind of representation like that is in fan fiction, where all the representation lives before it's mainstream. Which, I mean, not that fan fiction isn't so niche anymore. Like, so many people are involved with either writing or reading, whatever. But it's actually the first place that I've heard of asexuality. So I think it's a weird medium, but I think it's still a valid place for people to have representation. I don't know if anyone has any other comments about that.
Yeah, no, I think we're good on that point.
Yep.
Unfortunately,
we got
not
a question that's
say.
related. I'm sorry?
Yeah. It's just unfortunately there's not too much to say on that topic.
No.
It really sucks.
No.
Yeah.
We have a related question. Augustine wants to ask, I would like to add to the question, how do you think representation of sex-favorable characters in media should be handled?
It's hard. And I'll be the first person to say that it is not easy, because it is difficult enough to kind of break through compulsory sexuality to show a character who does not want sex. And it's difficult enough to get people to understand that. Like if you take the default person off the street, it's hard enough to get them to understand that you do not want sex and no, there's nothing wrong with you. You're normal, you know, you're not, it's not because you're broken, it's not because of this, that, or the other, that's just how you are. It is one step harder again to get them to understand that, and then get them to understand that you want sex anyway for different reasons other than sexual attraction. So it's definitely not an easy thing to do. It's complicated, it's messy, and it's hard, but we owe it to ourselves to do the hard work. And I think like the best way to go about it is to ask questions of people who are sex favorable or who are QPO, to understand their experience, and to give them the resources and the space to be able to communicate their own experience in fiction. I think it starts with honest conversations about what that is like, evidencing that in sociological research, you know, interviews, articles about what that's like, and from there using those resources to kind of replicate them in fiction and in film.
Or even better, like have people with those experiences leading the way, telling their own stories, you know.
Better yet.
Right, you know, and even if then people who aren't writers, there are so many ways into the media and into telling stories, and this is something that I'm really passionate about, is not just like what stories are on the page, but who is telling those stories, right? We need more diversity in writers, and we need more diversity in directors, and we need more actors playing ace characters, ace actors playing ace characters, and stuff like that. People who can bring that lived experience to any piece of the media that there is, you know, songwriters, everything. We need all of it. And it's hard because there is a lot of gatekeepiness in the media. And there is a lot of fear of, if I'm open about this, will I, you know, make myself look less likely, like will I be less attractive in a writer's room interview if I mention that I'm ace, when three of the 5 characters are, you know, all gonna have to have the sexy time at some point, and I'm gonna have to write that. People are gonna think I can't do it. Like, it's hard, and I can understand people not feeling comfortable advocating in that space. But I think that that's the best way forward, is that we let ourselves take the narrative and run. We tell the stories.
Well, we have a related question. So someone asks, how can we increase and improve representation in media? How did the rest of the LGBTQ community achieve it? I think that's a very tough question. People want praxis.
Oh, well, in terms of how the rest of the LGBTQIA+ community got better representation, it started very much, telling own stories. It started with, like, there has been a lot of queer people behind the scenes in film and television, and someone said Ellen, that's very true. But there have been queer people working very loud, like very, very in prominent positions in the film, television industry, theaters full of queer people, like, since the beginning of time, right? So even when the stories weren't there, you had the creatives still driving it. And that's why you have a lot of coded characters start to creep in, is because people wanted to see themselves, but they weren't allowed to see themselves. Well, that's part of why. Then you have the villains and the demonization. That's another thing. But so it really did came from people starting to be like, no, now we get to tell our own stories. You have documentaries like Paris is Burning, really influential. You have things like Will and Grace. Will and Grace was so phenomenally influential into people's just general acceptance of queer people. It's specifically gay men, but like, it's kind of important that people start slowly but surely building up and building up and building up, and that's where it happened. And I think, like I was saying before, same thing goes. We just have to get in those rooms, start telling those stories. Sorry, I talk too much. Someone else.
No, you're not talking too much at all.
Probably even reach out to like openly ace professionals in the media industry and try to like ask them, write to them, as I guess like writing letters and like approaching media persons to like represent the community was one of the things that a lot of gay people did back in the day in order to like get their voice forward. And I guess even ace people have to do the same.
Something that jumps to mind for me is once BoJack Horseman finished, when the the final finale came out, and saddest day of my life, Aaron Paul put out this really amazing social media post about how proud he was to have played Todd and to learn about the asexual community and to meet people like that and to be able to be a voice for them. And that, like, thinking about it makes me misty-eyed. But things like that, like, obviously we've got a long way to go, but I think it's important to have hope and to remember that we are making progress in those ways. Seeing like Jesse Pinkman tweet that he loves ace people, like, so I don't know, it's hard, especially when, you're just a little guy. It's a big question to ask, like, how do we get more representation? But I think we're on the right path.
And it's a very strange thing to say, but I also want to point out that a good way to make sure that we continue to have the growth and representation we have is to go out and support it. Like, if you see a book by an ace author, you know, buy it or review it, borrow it from your library. If it's an Australian author, they'll get money for that anyway. You know, and give it a review. Like, the more we talk about the stuff that's out there, the more buzz they get, the more support they get, the more likely people are to see this as a viable investment opportunity. And I hate thinking of art and the media as, you know, an investment sort of thing, but the people with the power, they do that's how they think about it. So if we show them that there's money in it and that it's valuable and that people are interested, that's just how we build momentum.
Yeah.
In a sense, capitalizing on the woke capitalism, as they say. It might be they're making money of it, and that's all they see. But the positive is that we're still getting the word out there,
and making sure that creators know that asexual stories are just as interesting and valid, and you know the audience is not going to be turned off by something that's new to them. You know, if people are willing to, especially like in TV and stuff, learn or say, "Oh, that's new," and I'll learn about it. You know, and just make sure, because one of the things in that kind of space that irritated me was when they made Riverdale, and they had a mechanically ace character in the new Riverdale comics, which they based it off, which is one of my favorite characters, Jughead. And he's also mechanically ace, but also kind of, most people just say that he's also Arrow as well. And when they made the TV show, obviously someone decided that him being ace didn't fit with, you know, what they wanted to tell the story of for that particular show. Like, it wasn't, I don't know. And I heard, you know, the actor that played him, I don't know his name, but was advocating to include the asexual storyline for his character. But
he hated it.
Against it.
Yeah, he hated that so much. Yeah, he spoke out against it like multiple times, where he was like, "Can you please leave Jughead alone?" Like, he did not want them to do that to the character at all.
Yeah. So you've got that sort of problematic translation of mechanically ace character into not, you know, making them more sort of normalized for the, you know, audience that they're aiming at.
The really upsetting thing is that there's so few of us already. There are so few like ace characters, and especially Jughead, who's like fucking, like, pardon my language, iconic, because his asexuality has been very consistent. And to have that taken away is like such an affront. Like, how could you do that? Yeah. Like, it's such an insult. It would be like if somebody, you know, if they made like a canon BoJack Horseman comic or something where Todd got like, and you know, it would be just unthinkable. But they totally did it.
Yep, and I think that touches upon something that Amy was mentioning earlier, about how all this plays into asexual erasure. Basically, any character with those traits or basically that are just erased or pushed aside because, you know, no one's gonna make a fuss about it or no one's gonna notice.
Yeah, it's like one of the points I've seen about why do you have to come out as asexual, because it doesn't, like, unless you're introducing someone to your partner, people are like, there's no point for you to come out as asexual because it doesn't actually, you know, affect anything that they're concerned about. But
the thing is,
at the same time,
it totally does.
It totally does, yeah.
Like, how many asexuals get pressured toward, you know, being more sexual? Like, if, you know, if you're an ace who hasn't come out, you're gonna get people asking you questions about it. Like, there's all these little ways that you're treated like you don't really belong. You know, there's all of these kind of deeply ingrained sexual rituals in society. I know sexual ritual sounds very intense and kind of fun, right? But like, it's stuff like those conversations about, oh, who do you have a crush on? right? Who remembers being in primary school and all the kids saying, oh, who do you have a crush on? And you not knowing what they're talking about, right? Like things like that. And those little things happen all throughout life. Yeah, and you still get people being like, oh, but why do you need to be so vocal about being ace? You don't even have anything in your closet. It's like, yes, I do. You just can't fathom the alternative.
This conversation, that is a form of oppression.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think the same thing sort of happens with the ace characters. Like what's the point in having an ace character? Because, you know, there's no story to tell there when there actually is. And I think that's just, you know, ace erasure.
I don't believe I have only watched bits and pieces of Riverdale. Actually, Amy, do you watch Riverdale?
No, I didn't watch it because of the whole Jughead thing. I would have watched it otherwise, but I sort of not watching it at protest.
Then I have not watched any Riverdale. And so I'm pretty sure he has other things going on that don't involve sex. Like, you know, I'm pretty sure he's in some kind of gang. Is he trying to sex up all the members of the gang? I don't know. He could be, because apparently being ace is so boring that I cannot think of anything other than that. I'm getting nothing back. Actually, no, I can hear Amy through the door.
There was a question about songs that remind you of being ace.
Yeah, there are a couple of people interested in that. I have a question asking you guys what your favorite ace song about asexual relationships or just being ace is, or any recommendations from you.
The thing is that they're all gonna be accidental.
I think the look, I can self-promo, but I won't. But other than, I think the only song I know that's like explicitly mentions asexuality is D&D and Asexuality by, oh fuck, I forgot the band's name, but it's a really good song. That was cute. But yeah, there are lots of accidental ones. I love the platonic love song that is "You're My Best Friend" by Queen.
Yes.
I
know that that's probably actually meant to be a Romo song, but I'm taking it as a platonic love song.
What? I thought it was about being friends. Is it not about being friends?
He wrote it to his girlfriend at the time, so yeah.
God, no.
I'm taking it.
You
I'm
can
taking it as a platonic love song. You can be best friends with a romantic partner, like you can. That is valid, but
you know, a good relationship is based on that. But you know, you don't go around saying my best friend, because then it's like, what about my other friends? That, you know, if we look at the Stephen Moffat school of thought, friends don't mean anything unless you're boning.
Oh no. Shout out to this comment. That Queen song only exists for me to sing to my dog. Yep. That's the kind of platonic love that I want in my life.
I'm going to sing it to my dog now.
Do you guys think that music about asexuality and stuff is going up, like the number of pieces that people put out, or like, is there more popularity? Is that scene becoming more popular?
I do mainly listen to Taylor Swift, and she hasn't released a song about asexuality yet, and I do find it disappointing, but hopefully in her next album, Taylor, please, in my plea.
I mean, I think I think the hard thing is that people don't really, like, mainstream musicians will never release songs about sexuality, like their particular sexual orientation, right? They'll just sing about the process of, you know, falling for someone or wanting to bang someone, right? Mm-hmm. They'll sing about the experience of it. And singing about the absence of that, we could claim basically any song that's not about romance or sex is an asexual anthem, right? But if it's not explicit, how would we know that that's That's the problem. And if it's explicit, is it too on the nose? Like, I have written plenty of explicitly ace songs, but are they too on the nose for a mainstream audience? 100%. Like, no one's going to listen to those songs except aces. But
are you using 1 and 4 chords? Because if not, that's perfect for the mainstream.
Artemis does write brilliant songs. This is the truth. This is the God's truth. Artemis is amazing. You should. Do you have like a band camp or something?
I don't. I'm not. I have a YouTube channel. I made a couple of ace songs with Queer Sounds. Queer Sounds has a band camp. It's just a duo of me and another ace artist from California. But yeah, personally, if you want to find me, I'm on YouTube. It's just my name. But yeah. My pronouns are they, and I had one song on Spotify, but it's come off now. We couldn't afford to renew it. So nothing on Spotify at the moment, RIP. But yeah.
We have a question asking about actors playing ace parts, and the person asked, do you know any good examples of actors reacting favorably in the sense of like playing a headcanon ace character?
Aaron Paul. He loved being Todd. Loved being Todd. And he's said some really sweet stuff about how much how much the community meant to him and how much getting to know the ace community meant to him. That's the one that I know about because I'm like a Aaron Paul stan. But if there are any others,
you
please.
can feel his heart when he's playing the part.
You really can. You can like hear it in his voice. Like he knows just how much it means. There's such an awareness of that moment. But yeah, I'll find the post I'm talking about because it's really sweet and wholesome. If someone else wants to take the wheel.
Actually, I think my favorite thing about BoJack Horseman and the whole ace thing actually doesn't feature Todd. There's the thing where the bunny, whose name I don't remember.
Rutabaga?
Rutabaga, yeah. And like she's talking to the phone and she's like, it's not a Jesus thing. And then BoJack's like, he's like, I know. Basically, here's the app or whatever.
Oh, that's sorry. Yeah, that's not Rutabaga. That's a minor character. I don't remember her name. Rutabaga's an asshole.
No.
Yeah, I know what you mean though. Yeah, she ends up being like Todd's girlfriend.
Yeah, and it's I don't know. She's important to the end of Todd's character. The fact they get their own place, which is the biggest step for Todd.
Essentially what kind of happens is like the main character sort of walks in on Maud. Thank you guys. Maud I think having a conversation with maybe an ex or something, and he's just saying
it was someone she was seeing, and she wanted to still see it, but she didn't want to have sex with him.
Yeah, and he's asking her like, is it a Jesus thing? And when he walks off, she kind of says to BoJack like, it's not a Jesus thing, and he kind of like is like, oh, there's this app that I know about, which is an app that Todd's made for aces to connect, and
not
even
Todd,
that is
friends.
Yeah, it's such a really nice like it's almost like a bit of a metaphor or a gesture toward things like Avon, like the Asexuality, Visibility and Education Network, that importance of digital community to asexual people, to help her know that she's not alone. There's other people like her. Oh, I didn't know that. Apparently Maud like was voiced by an asexual person as well. That's really sweet.
Really? Yay!
That means a lot.
That's exciting.
Oh.
I think the problem is with this question is that I don't really know any other sort of ace characters on TV that to know the actors and what they feel about it. It's just not enough. Not enough characters.
Yeah, and it's also hard to hear. And not only is that not like there aren't that many examples, but it's also hard to know because we don't know what's happening behind the scenes as much. And like going to a related question, people want to know you guys' thoughts on Elsa as Aero Ace.
I
would love to see it. I think there's some pretty compelling evidence if you ask me. I really like the bit in Frozen 2 where you know, even like, I know it's the thing like that makes it difficult to say either way is that a lot of those scenes are when she was a kid, but there's bits where they'll be like, oh, you know, like you'll meet someone when you grow up, and she's like, oh, bleh. Like she doesn't want to even know about it. Like she has this kind of like a pretty clear like almost repulsion to the idea. She seems like she wants to stay single,
And
but at the same time, I know
say,
there's a lot of people that are calling for them to give Elsa a girlfriend. So I don't know. Maybe they'll end up going the other way.
But on your point about
ways good, I guess.
Like
maybe she can be a romance favorable era ace.
Yeah,
maybe. We can have both.
Yeah.
Maybe
But
she
like,
ends up with that minor character, that honey Marin girl.
On your point, Noel, about the scenes with Elsa being a kid, but then they also show Anna as a kid also really being in love with the idea of romance and finding, you know, her one true love and stuff. So I feel like you've got that balance there. So it's not just her immaturity at that stage, because obviously her sister, who's she's really close to, that's her dream, is to find her prince and, you know, get married and do all that stuff. She's the romantic one.
She goes out and does that with the first man she sees because it fits in the image that she's created in her head, whereas Elsa just wants to be alone. But at the same time, does she want to be alone because of the thing with but with everything that's happened to her, she's want to be away from people because she feels that she's dangerous. But at the same time,
I was going to say, the thing I love about Elsa is that yes, she's obviously the Ice Queen, but you can see, even though she hasn't got that interest in maybe finding a romantic partner, she still has really strong relationship with her family. She really loves her sister. She really loves Kristoff. And so you know that she doesn't have that stereotypical sort of like cold-hearted kind of personality. She's got that warm, loving personality, and it's still okay, you know, if she doesn't want to have a partner, because you know, you can see how much of a loving person that she is. And that's why I really love her character.
Yeah, like the thing is,
it's like that Wreck-It Ralph meme. You're cold, but you don't have to be cold.
Yeah. Like Elsa has been told again and again, like that she like literally conceal, don't feel, don't let it show. Like she has to hide her feelings. Like she's been told again and again that she has to be this cold thing. And her entire arc is about the fact that she cannot fit that box. Like she is an emotional person. Like she is a nice person. And, you know, combined with the fact that ultimately like the movie sort of prioritizes her love for her sister over this sort of like you know, this, what do I want here, toxic relationship that her sister had with whatever his name was. The love's true kiss there is a sisterly love. It's not a romantic one.
It's also it's not true love's kiss. It's a moment of true.
Yeah, but you know what I'm going for. It draws from that idea of true love's first kiss, which is this big, you know, cultural myth, a fairy tale myth that is such a recognizable thing that when they kind of parody it and translate it into that, they do a similar thing to like in Maleficent, for instance, like in you know, Maleficent revises that idea of
live action one, I think.
Yeah, and turns it into a mother's, or like a kind of a surrogate mother's love for a daughter, whereas this is like a sister's love for another sister, and it's just as valid, it's just as powerful, but love can look like other things. So I think that is why like Elsa resonates so much with an asexual audience, because she, even if they didn't mean it, like she's ace coded, and that's past the point of opinion.
I think the other thing with, in terms of just the behind the scenes of Frozen, is the story it's based on, the Snow Queen. Elsa's the villain, and Elsa was going to be the villain up until like quite a late point. So I think that coding might still be there from when she was a villain, which we might be going back to. You know, hating on the aces, motherfuckers.
Going to a related question from this, there's a question asking you guys what shows you don't recommend to watch because of bad negative representation of asexuality in them.
Anything by Stephen Moffat, fuck that guy.
House sucked, but I think we've already touched on House.
House, yeah,
Yeah,
that
House
was
is a
terrible.
very bad
God,
example.
House sucks. I'm
That
not a
was
fan
It's a
of
good
Dexter.
example of being bad.
I'm not a fan of Dexter. It's not canon or anything, but a lot of people like will read Dexter as Ace. There's actually a really nice academic chapter about it in God, I think it's called Asexuality, by Karen Kowski and Milks, where they talk about this idea that like Dexter is coded as Ace through like a kind of pathologization because he's written to be a psychopath, and he has this whole thing about he's an emotionless robot, you know, like he isn't interested, he doesn't desire sex, and that's entwined with this like, and that's I'm not making a reach here. He's literally a psychopath in that show, so I don't know.
It's much more evident in Dexter's based on a book or a series of books, and him being a psychopath is much more evident in the book, where he's like, I don't really want to have a wife or this thing, but I need one to be able to maintain my cover. So I will go and find this broken woman who is traumatized and doesn't want sex either because of the trauma, and so she won't push for anything.
Oh yikes! There's a comment in the chat about there's an episode in Brooklyn Nine-Nine where asexual is used as an insult by Gina. Yikes! I haven't watched it, and that's the best piece of evidence I've seen so far not to see it.
But I would feel different if it wasn't for Gina, who is a horrible person.
I mean, that's not the only thing. With recent events, Brooklyn Nine-Nine's been in the fire.
But yeah, honestly, like a lot of the headcanon as Ace characters aren't really good representation of asexuality. There are a lot of these people who are that trope of so cold and distant and assholey that they couldn't possibly care for that kind of sexual or romantic relationship, because they're always ace coded too, not just ace coded. So yeah, I think all of them are not what I would give to someone if you're going to be like, this is what asexuality is. Definitely not. It's a bad plan.
Yeah, don't do that. The thing is that like even those ones that are headcanon as ace, they're so sporadically good. Do you know what I mean? They're inconsistent. Like it might be good at a point, like maybe a season or something, but then eventually it will dip. Like The Doctor is a good example of that. My advice, if you want to introduce someone to asexuality through media, use a YA book. Use a book. Use a book where they've meant to do it. Use Loveless by Alice Oseman. I know that's getting, I don't know, a lot of people love Loveless and a lot of people don't, but overall what I've said is mostly positive.
Use YouTube. YouTube is a great place.
YouTube, there are a lot of good videos on the topic. This is sort of a related head of, I watch a lot of anime and stuff, and there aren't actual, as far as I know, I haven't come across any actual explicitly ace characters in anime and manga, but there are a lot of ace coded protagonists that are pretty good. Someone was asking about Luffy from One Piece, so I guess at least there's a market for that.
One Piece fans are too powerful.
Yeah,
I don't know how you do it. There's like 900 episodes, buddy. You have my respect and my fear.
I haven't caught up. I'm like 600 episodes, and I'm gonna take a break for the next 10 years, and I'll come back later.
Amazing. Too powerful. Do we have any other questions?
Right now, I think we got most of the questions.
Neat.
I am a reference in the Invisible Orientation book. Not a reference, no. Here's a
that's actually a good point, because people want to know if you guys have any recommendations for books, songs, and other stuff, including YA, that have good ace representation and stuff.
I recommend everyone go watch Nikki Vivica's Asexual Love Poem. It is phenomenal. It's a poem. It's a piece of performance poetry. but it exists in filmed form, and I recommend everyone go take a look at that.
Anything else, guys?
Bojack.
Yeah,
I've been sending mine
obviously.
into the chat.
Bojack's great.
We've talked about it a lot.
Those Todd-centric episodes, especially.
People
Yeah.
sleep on there's a young adult book called Saw Kill Girls by Claire Legrand. It's not amazing. It's not amazing, and eventually the kind of metaphor about sexism just becomes painfully oblique. But the Ace character in it is extraordinarily well written. Yeah, the chat is doing my work for me. The one thing I know about is like asexuality and YA, and everyone's already listing the good ones, so there's not much I can do here.
I mean, I'm currently reading Loveless by Alice Osborne, and I would recommend that because it's actually the first time I've ever seen or read anything where there's representation of a character that I identify with so much. It's actually scary how like similar their experience is to mine. And it just kind of shocked me that I've never actually seen myself represented in media before until now. And obviously you have the other Ace characters, but this particular character, I think I actually identify with a lot. So sometimes it's a little bit hard to read because I'm like, oh man, that's me. but yeah, I can't think of any other sort of books at the moment. There was a book, I think it was not explicitly Ace, like as in said in the book, but Clariel by Garth Nix. The character
Don't
in
mention
that.
Clariel.
No.
No. Clariel is one of the books that furthered the death adjacent Ace thing that I'm studying. But yeah, Clariel, yes, I'll give you it, but it's a mixed bag. It's not the best representation.
Not the best, but it was sort of as me reading when I had nothing that kind of seemed anything like my experience. It was sort of close enough, and I was just like, it's not obviously. I really like that series of books, but it's probably not for everybody. And as you say, it's a little bit dated.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're looking for video games, I recommend The Outer Worlds. It's on Steam now, so it's got Parvati in it, and her quest line's just great, amazing writing, great voice acting, and all that stuff. So there's that.
There's been a couple of new ones that came out. For example, there's Belle Revolt and there's Beyond the Black Door. I hated them both, but they include canon asexual characters. But I'm very critical. Yeah, I've mentioned Summerbird Blue a few times. There's Dare Mighty Things. There's God, what else? I read so many of these damn things, and then I have to just forget about them because they're all terrible. The one that I love to hate, the one that I have been forced to lampoon in my research, is a book called Every Heart a Doorway by Seanan McGuire. For me, that was the first book I ever read with a canon asexual character, and while it's problematic for reasons that I'm lambasting in my PhD, it is stunning. Like that moment where you first read the word asexual, like a character say that they're asexual on a page in a book you're reading, is something special that, it's a kind of magic that can't ever be recreated. And for me, that was that book. But yeah, I think the chat's kind of doing our work for us here. We're getting lots of really good recommendations.
Well, in that case, I think you can answer this question the best, Mel. Have any of you actually read Chuck Tingle's books with asexual protagonists?
Yes, I love Chuck Tingle. I think he's so dang funny. The Tingler, yeah. Because the kind of
so he actually tingles people.
Yeah, they call themselves his books are called Tinglers. That's his name is Chuck Tingler, and his books are called Tinglers, and he writes absolutely absurd erotica just out of the blue. And they're all ridiculous. It's stuff like, pounded in the butt by the linear concept of time. Like they're really ridiculous and out there, but actually like decently written. Like he's not awful. They're actually pretty good and weirdly detailed. But he's got a couple that are like ace themed, And the really good one is like, because they'll all be like, you know, pounded in the butt by a British pound come to life, pounded in the butt by a T-Rex, pounded in the butt by the linear concept of time, and then the ace one is like not pounded in the butt by anything, and that's okay. Or like it's just really good and wholesome. But yeah, he did a great trans wizard one recently, just to stick it to Rowling. Yeah, that's true. It's so funny. It's like Harriet,
Someone has to do
the
it to stick it to
trans wizard.
Rowling.
Yeah, oh, it's so good. There's a really good like Tumblr post about it where they kind of
Fun
line out all the
fact,
best
just
bits.
because we mentioned Rowling, her name's Karen. J. Karen Rowling. That explains everything.
Let's not get into J.K. Rowling, please.
No,
Karen's B.
you
Karen.
don't want me ranting on that. You don't.
We don't want it. We've got like 8 minutes left. You don't want it to just be a J.K. rant.
TERFs are trash. That's all we need to say.
Yep. TERFs suck. Trans people are valid and TERFs suck.
And Karen suck too. Especially Karens who are TERFs. Well, we don't have much time left, so you guys want to like have you missed out on anything? Have the wonderful audience forgot to ask any big questions? Because I'm looking at the list that we made before, and we've covered.
Would you like to just say my dog? Oh no, it's not before.
Oh no! Oh, awful. There's been a terrible accident. It's okay. We will rebuild. He's
gone now.
Australia 2020. We will rebuild.
Please stop laughing at me now.
Do you guys have any? Oh, yep, we got another one. What advice would you give when it comes to writing ace characters?
Do your research. You know, I think the best, if you're ace yourself, write what you know. Like, don't be, if you can, like, write your experience. But if there's things you don't know, like, there's a lot of research out there. There's a lot of interviews. There's a lot of articles. Better yet, like, if you know someone who's ace, like, talk to them. Basically, like, my best advice would be, like, don't just make it up, you know, like if you don't know, like don't just make it up and hope that that's okay. If you have a feeling it's problematic or that it might be hurtful, look, chances are you're probably right, but there are ways to work on that. Like you can get like an asexual like ethics reader to give you some tips. Yeah, just make sure that your work is informed and comes from a place of like wanting to help the community.
Yeah, and if I think, like we were talking, multiple ace characters is amazing because you can show a diversity of experiences in this amazingly diverse spectrum that we have. And if you can manage more than one, then yeah, that's amazing, and please do it, like 100%.
Yeah, but I would suggest that we should keep in mind that we're trying to not propagate any biases when writing ace characters while trying to like give voice to the community. And one of my fears that sometimes keeps me up at night is, I don't know if you guys know about the whole snowflake and safe space thing that happened. Basically Marvel made it's a bunch of Marvel comic book artists made these characters that are supposed to be representation of the bi community and the LGBTQ community. I think there was even there was an ace character among them, and they just went over the top. And one of the characters is literally called Snowflake, and there's another one called Safe Space. So they tried to like reclaim these things, but they made it a cringy mess. So
yikes.
Yep.
Yikes, that's all I can say to that.
I think
not surprised.
I think the ace character's name was Screen Time, where he has a smartphone glued to his face, and because he used too much computers, so it was insane.
That's not a good take.
And apparently, like the writers were trying to, like, they didn't have any malice in their hearts, according to like what the discussions that happened behind the scenes. They were just completely tone deaf.
They were just dumb. Yeah, I mean, my advice would be like, how do you write ace characters? Well, don't do that. Don't do that.
Yeah, and like familiarize yourself with the prevalent tropes, and like if you're going to play with them, be sure you're playing with them and not playing into them. You know what I mean? That's easier said than done, obviously. But you know, you gotta really think about, like, unfortunately, the standard is like there's so little representation, so that when someone does something, it's like, this is the representation, and you have to think, what does this say if this is the representation? Which I hate that that's how it is, but that's the world we live in right now, and until we get a huge flood of more and more things, it's kind of something you have to keep in mind.
And I guess we use the references we already have, just like in art, references help. Like good references, not bad ones, of course. No hows.
Well, in a way, those things like do help, in the sense that if we know what's bad, then we get a better idea of what not to do ourselves. You know, like the more it's sad that that's a stepping stone we have to cross, but because of things like House, it's easier to see the problems. Things like, you know, pathologization of ace people. Like when you can kind of categorize the big bad representations, it's easier to keep them out of what you write in turn.
Yeah, I guess you've also got to keep in mind that, yes, you might be wanting to write for ace people to find characters like themselves, but you're also writing for people who may never have heard of asexuality before. So whatever you write, that might be someone's first instance of finding out about asexuality. So it's kind of hard because it puts a lot of pressure on creators trying to think, you know, are they representing in a good way that's going to educate the general public about it? But I don't really know how to help that. It's just, you know, I thought that, you know, it's just like being ace and coming out to everybody and being the voice for all aces, like, because not many people know about it. That's just a thing you've got to, I guess, take into consideration.
Yep. And with that, I think we should start wrapping up. I would like to thank everybody, all the panelists, for taking their time out and talking about these very important issues of media representation, especially about ace people. Thanks for all the attendees for joining in and listening to us. And finally, I would like to ask all the panelists to give their final inputs and thoughts and goodbyes to your wonderful audience.
Thank you all for watching. It's been amazing. We've had a really active and great chat. And I hope this was helpful to you. So enjoy the rest of your ace week.
Oh yeah, and not to mention the fact that this is also Intersex Awareness Day coming up. So there's that. There's a broad spectrum, and we should like voice out, give voice to all of the communities available. Anything else you guys want to add before we leave?
I just look, go.
No, go.
We're both too polite.
So,
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought Intersex Day was tomorrow. It's today. Intersex Awareness Day is actually today. So happy
Intersex Awareness Day.
Happy Intersex Awareness Day.
Massive love to any intersex aces. Double rep day for you. I get the joy of it being ADHD Awareness Month as well as Ace Week and Halloween. It all happens at once. So that
makes the ducks in a row.
Coincidence?
I just want to say that
I think not.
I heard someone said something and I didn't hear what it was. But I apologize. I spoke over someone. Anyway, I'm just going to continue. I want to thank you all for coming. There are definitely a lot of other really awesome events happening this week. So make sure you're checking all of those out. I think, what is the where you go for the information? I can't remember. I am a bad.
Aussie Ace Week.
Yes.
Someone will link it.
Look up Aussie Ace Week for all of the stuff here. If you want to come find me on my YouTube channel, I'm releasing a song for Ace Week on Friday. And on the 1st of November, I'm hosting a show called Campfire Stories, which is just like a queer storytelling event. It's very ace inclusive. Not all of the stuff will be by ace people, but we've encouraged people as a special celebration of Ace Week. So come and hang out if you're interested in that too.
Yep. Thank you. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.